There is a natural way to meet whatever comes, a way that honors the vastness of your feelings without ever being controlled by them. The struggle, the resistance, the endless wish that things might be otherwise is often the heaviest burden we carry. Tonight, we will go on a journey to put that burden down. Welcome. I am the Lotus Whisper. Tonight, through gentle stories and quiet contemplation, rooted in the ancient wisdom of Zen Buddhism, we will explore the profound and liberating path of acceptance and surrender. We seek to understand what stands in the way of this simple flow, what keeps us fighting against life instead of resting within it. We will discover the quiet, beautiful peace that waits just beneath the surface of the struggle, deep in our soul. You do not need to solve anything tonight. You do not need to understand every subtle teaching. You only need to listen. So, gently close your eyes if you haven't already. Let your breath become the soft anchor that moors you to this moment. And in the simple act of listening, something within you will begin to soften. Let the stillness of the mind come not by force, but by the quiet release of the day. Let us begin the muddy path of resistance. There was once a young monk who lived in a small mountain monastery, high above the valley, where the air was always crisp and clean, and the silence was deep enough to touch. Every morning, before the first whisper of dawn, he would wake to tend the garden. This garden was the source of all their sustenance, and his morning practice was a sacred duty, a form of walking meditation and mindful work. The path to the garden was beautiful in the dry season, winding through a quiet forest where the ground was cushioned with fallen pine needles, but the path also ran near a cluster of mountain springs, and after any rain, this stretch became a ribbon of thick, clinging mud. The young monk hated this mud. He did not just dislike it. He developed a genuine burning aversion to it. Every morning, he would pick his way along the treacherous edges of the path, trying desperately to keep his rough-spun robes clean. He would step on slippery, half-buried rocks and exposed roots, contorting his body and tightening his muscles to avoid the mess. He would arrive at the garden tired, not from the work, but from the battle. His peaceful morning practice had become an hour-long fight with the earth itself. This feeling of being at war with a patch of dirt is a perfect small mirror of the resistance we carry into our lives every day. We are often not fighting the vast, cosmic battles we imagine, but a tiny, persistent patch of mud. The aversion to the moment as it is, the nature of suffering, or dukkha, in the Buddhist view, is not merely pain. Pain is inevitable. It is the physical ache, the sting of loss, the chill of the morning air. Suffering, however, is the optional layer of resistance on top of the pain. It is the young monk's hatred of the mud. Think of the things you resist, the small clinging patches of mud in your own life. Perhaps it is a persistent, unwanted thought that returns again and again, and you exhaust yourself trying to push it away. Perhaps it is a noise in the night, a tiny sound you magnify into an obstacle to sleep. Or perhaps it is a feeling of inadequacy that you refuse to acknowledge, spending all your energy on pretending it does not exist. The young monk's resistance to the mud was a resistance to a fundamental truth of the mountain. Rain falls. The ground, where water flows, gets soft. These are the simple, immutable conditions of his environment. By fighting the mud, he was, in essence, fighting the mountain, the rain, and the flow of nature. One morning, after a heavy, unexpected storm, the path was worse than ever. It was a slick, deep slurry from edge to edge. There was no way to walk around it. The monk stood at the edge of the forest, his heart sinking into familiar frustration and anger. He felt a wave of resentment towards the rain, the path, and even his own morning duty. He hesitated. He took one step, and his foot slid. He took another, and the cold, thick mud sucked at his sandal. In a flash of desperate energy, he took his eyes off the ground and tried to leap across a deeper section, missed his footing, and went down. He did not fall hard, but he fell fully. He was soaked with the thick, cold earth, from his robes to his hands. For a moment, he simply lay there, defeated and utterly still, covered in what he had spent months trying so desperately to avoid. The shame and frustration were immense, but they were quickly followed by something else. An abrupt, total surrender. He couldn't fight it anymore. The battle was over, and the mud had won. In that moment of total defeat, something shifted. He sat up slowly, feeling the cool, soft texture of the mud on his skin. He noticed the smell of the damp earth and the rich, loamy scent of the forest floor, a scent he had been too tense to perceive before. He was still dirty, perhaps dirtier than he had ever been, but the anxiety was gone. The energy he had previously spent on meticulous avoidance was now simply present, resting in his body. He stood up, no longer caring about his robes. He took a full, unhurried step directly into the deepest part of the path. He felt the cold mud seep pleasantly between his toes and around his ankle. He took another step, then another. He walked mindfully, not fighting the suction of the mud, but lifting his foot gently, allowing the earth to release it. It was no longer a battle. It was a simple, intimate, and perhaps even tender engagement with the ground beneath him. He arrived at the garden a few minutes later, still covered in mud, but entirely at peace. His heart was quiet, and his body was relaxed. The mud did not change. The path did not dry out, but his relationship to the mud changed completely. This is the heart of acceptance. It is not a passive resignation, nor a declaration that the situation is desirable. Acceptance is an active shift in perspective, the cessation of the secondary resistance. It is the deep recognition of things simply as they are. The great lesson here is that our peace does not depend on the absence of mud, but on our willingness to meet the mud without judgment or aversion. Our most persistent and challenging thoughts, the irritating habits of a loved one, the unpredictable swings of our health, or the setbacks in our work. These are all patches of mud. When we meet them with the same fierce resistance as the young monk, we exhaust ourselves. We create the tension in our neck, the shallow breath, the racing thoughts. But when we allow ourselves to step fully into the present moment, mud and all, the body can relax. The mind can find stillness, not by forcing the moment away, but by finally allowing it to be here. Try this simple experiment right now. Notice any small discomfort you may be feeling as you rest. It could be an itch, a slight tension in your jaw, or a small worry flickering in your mind. For a moment, stop fighting it. Just allow it to be there, as a simple sensation or a simple thought. Do not judge it. Do not try to fix it. Do not wish it away. Simply allow the thought to be thought. The sensation to be sensation. In that allowance, a tiny current of peace flows into the space where the resistance once was. This is the wisdom of the muddy path. The path to the garden is not made peaceful by the perfection of the ground, but by the perfection of your willingness to walk it exactly as it is. The young monk continued his practice, and the path continued to be muddy after the rains. But now he walked differently. Sometimes he would even smile as the cool mud gripped his foot, for he recognized an old teacher, a constant reminder that peace is found not in the victory over circumstances, but in the surrender to them. Let this deep, earthy sense of acceptance settle into your body. Feel the weight of resistance drain away, replaced by the simple, quiet weight of the present moment. Your struggle is over for tonight. There is nothing to fix, nothing to avoid, and nowhere else to be. The weight of the uncarryable. The mountain monastery, where the young monk now walked his muddy path in peace, was overseen by an old master whose wisdom was as clear and deep as the mountain springs. This master often taught without words, his lessons arriving in the form of a quiet gesture, a pause in conversation, or a simple, unexpected action. The greatest burden we carry, he once told a group of new students, is not the work of today, but the accumulated weight of what we are no longer carrying. This seemed like a riddle to the students. How could a burden be carried if it was no longer there? The master smiled, a gentle wrinkle in the corner of his eye. He did not explain. Instead, he simply directed them to carry out their daily duties. The primary form of uncarryable weight in life is the burden of outcomes, the clinging to how things must, should, or will be. This weight is carried in two baskets, the heavy basket of the past and the even heavier, invisible basket of the future. We cling to the past by reliving old mistakes, wishing for different choices, or holding fast to old griefs and resentments. This is the resistance to what has been. It is a refusal to let the past simply be the past, an object resting quietly on the shelf of memory. Instead, we insist on pulling it down, dusting it off, and forcing it to be alive and active in the present moment, only to find that it crushes our ability to breathe freely. We cling to the future by projecting our will onto tomorrow. We worry, we plan obsessively, we attempt to force an infinite number of variables into a single desired result. This is the resistance to what will be or may not be. It is an act of trying to carry tomorrow's work with today's strength, which always leaves us depleted and anxious. The Zen story of emptying the cup speaks directly to this burden of accumulated weight. A learned scholar, anxious and full of his own knowledge, once came to a Zen master to ask about the way. The scholar spoke at length, detailing his vast understanding of Buddhist texts and philosophical systems. He was determined to prove his worthiness to receive the teaching. The master listened patiently, then began to pour tea. He poured for the scholar, and he poured, and he poured, until the cup was completely full. But still he kept pouring. The tea spilled over the rim, flooded the saucer, and began to run across the table. The scholar leaped up, shouting, "Stop! It is full. You can't put any more in." The master slowly put down the teapot and looked at the scholar. "Like this cup," he said gently, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" The scholar's full cup is the perfect image of the weight of the uncarryable. He was so full of his past learning, his fixed ideas, and his expectations for the future lesson that there was no space for the simple living reality of the present moment. He was carrying a full cup of yesterday's knowledge and tomorrow's hopes, and both were spilling over, obscuring the truth. In our own lives, the full cup is the story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we deserve. It is the narrative of unworthiness or the narrative of perpetual struggle. It is the need to be right, the need to control, the need for approval. All these are past accumulations that make the simple act of being present feel heavy. To empty the cup is to surrender the right to control the narrative. It is to let go of the idea that we must be a certain way or that others must behave according to our script. It is a moment-by-moment practice of dropping the burden. As you lie here, resting, let us practice dropping the burden of the uncarryable. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a deep, still well, the kind found in the ancient courtyards of the monastery, where the water is so dark and quiet that it perfectly mirrors the night sky. In your hands, you hold the invisible baskets of your burdens. The first basket holds the things you cannot change from the past. The harsh words spoken, the opportunity missed, the pain that was inflicted, or the pain you caused. It holds the memories you have played 1,000 times, always hoping for a different ending. Gently, tenderly, hold this basket. Do not review the contents. Simply feel the generalized, familiar weight. Now, with a soft exhale, imagine tipping the basket over the edge of the well. Hear the weight clunk as it hits the water, a small, final sound. Watch as the ripples of your past resistance settle and disappear. You do not need to understand it, forgive it, or fix it right now. You simply need to release your grip on the carrying of it. It belongs to the stillness of history. Let it go. Now, reach for the second basket. This one is filled with the anxieties of tomorrow. The tasks you must complete, the outcomes you desire, the potential worries, and the fears of the unknown. It is heavy with the weight of expectations, your own and those you imagine others hold for you. It is the burden of trying to pre-live the future. Notice how the muscles in your chest and belly tighten just by contemplating this basket. This is the weight of the uncarryable. The future cannot be carried today. It has not yet manifested, and your strength is only for this moment. Take a long, slow breath in, gathering all the tension associated with that future effort. And as you breathe out, with the soft sound of a sigh, let the second basket fall. Hear the splash as it meets the water. It is not an act of negligence. It is an act of profound trust. You are trusting the strength you will have when tomorrow finally arrives. And you are letting go of the fiction that you can control it now. The present moment is always empty enough for the peace of Zen to pour in. You have emptied your cup. You are simply here. The past is resting in the well. The future has yet to arrive. All that remains is the profound lightness of being in this simple sufficiency. Let your body feel this release. The shoulders soften. The jaw relaxes. The breath deepens, moving not against resistance, but with the flow of life itself. This lightness is your truest nature. Rest in it. The wisdom of the impermanent river. The mountain monastery was built beside a river, not a raging torrent, but a steady, persistent flow of clear, cold water fed by snowmelt and mountain rain. For the old master and his students, the river was not just a source of water. It was the clearest, most constant teacher of the core Buddhist truth of anicca, or impermanence. Everything changes. This is the single, undeniable principle of the universe. And yet, it is the truth we spend most of our lives resisting. We desire permanence for what we love, the joy, the health, the comfortable relationship, the successful outcome. And we desperately desire permanence for what we hate, the suffering, the pain, the difficulty, the moment of discomfort, wishing only for its end. Our resistance to change is what locks us into the struggle. When joy fades, we call it loss. When pain lingers, we call it injustice. In both cases, we are clinging to the idea that a moment once captured should remain frozen. The river taught them otherwise. A monk could stand on the bank for 100 years, but he would never see the same water twice. The river appears constant, a fixed feature of the landscape, but its true nature is utter, relentless, beautiful flow. It is a perfect metaphor for our own lives, which appear fixed and solid, yet are merely a continuous stream of experiences, sensations, and thoughts. One afternoon, the old master sat with a young student who was struggling with a deep sense of despair. The student's practice felt stale, his progress seemed to have stalled, and his usually peaceful mood had vanished, replaced by a constant, low-level anxiety. "Master," the student confessed, "I feel as though I have lost the peace I once found here. My meditation is shallow, my mind is restless, and the joy I felt in my practice has simply dried up. I fear I have failed." The master did not look at the student. He simply looked at the river. He picked up a small, smooth river stone, warmed by the sun, and held it out. "Tell me," the master asked quietly, "does the river fail when it runs fast and turbulent after the storm? Or does it fail when it becomes slow and shallow in the dry summer heat?" The student considered this. "The river simply is," he replied. "It is fast when the conditions are right for speed, and slow when the conditions are right for slowness. It does not choose. It simply flows according to the seasons." "And yet," the master murmured, tossing the stone gently back towards the bank, "you demand that your own flow, the river of your mind and heart, must always be fast and full of the energy you call joy or progress. You are treating the river of your life as a fixed pond that must never change its depth or temperature." The student saw the teaching in a flash of clarity. His despair was not caused by the absence of joy. It was caused by his clinging to the previous state of joy and his resistance to the current state of dryness and anxiety. He was fighting the season of his own mind. Impermanence means that just as joy must pass, so too must anxiety. Just as the river becomes shallow, it will inevitably become deep again. The practice is to observe the current state without judgment, without clinging, and without aversion. This is true surrender. It is the deep realization that you cannot hold on to anything, good or bad, for it is all moving, all changing. The emotion that feels overwhelming right now is merely a phase of the river. It is a powerful wave that will pass, a fleeting current that will move on. The master continued, his voice as smooth as the water. When you feel anxiety, sit with it as you would sit by the side of a turbulent stretch of the river. Do not try to smooth the water with your mind. Do not jump in to try and redirect the flow. Just observe the turbulence. See how the emotion moves. Notice where it arises, how it crests, and how it inevitably, without any effort from you, begins to subside and flow into the next state. When we cease to cling, we cease to suffer the change. As you lie here, resting, allow the river of your own experience to flow. If your mind is racing with the remnants of the day, do not scold it. Simply notice the speed of the current. If your body is finding a deep stillness, do not cling to the stillness, for even stillness is a passing state. Let the sounds you hear be like leaves floating down the river. They appear, they pass, and they are gone. Let the thoughts in your mind be like bubbles rising to the surface. They emerge, they burst, and they dissolve. You are the riverbank, the still, grounded witness that simply observes the ceaseless flow. The profound wisdom of impermanence is that by accepting that everything is temporary, we become free to fully inhabit the beauty of this one fleeting moment. We are freed from the desperate work of trying to stop the flow of life. Rest now, knowing that this moment too is moving. You are being carried gently downstream toward the vast, silent ocean of rest. There is no need to paddle, no need to turn back. Simply flow. Self-compassion in the falling rain. The practice of acceptance begins not with grand gestures of philosophical understanding, but with the small, quiet gesture of turning toward ourselves with kindness. This is the act of self-compassion, the foundation of accepting life's difficulties, as it acknowledges the struggle inherent in being human. A great storm once came to the mountain, bringing an unexpected rain that lasted for 3 days. The air was thick with mist, and the sound of the rain was a constant, drumming presence on the tiled roofs of the monastery. During this time, the monks were confined to the great hall for their continuous meditation. One older, devout monk found this confinement profoundly irritating. He was a man who lived by routine, and the disruption of the storm frayed his nerves. He felt restless, cramped, and worst of all, he felt a deep, self-critical judgment for his own irritation. A monk should be peaceful and accepting of the weather, he thought. To feel this agitation is a failure of my decades of practice. He felt an endless cycle of tension. He was irritated by the rain, and then he was irritated by his irritation. He was fighting the external condition, the rain, and the internal condition, his mood, simultaneously. The old master, passing by his cushion, noticed the tension in the monk's shoulders, the tightness around his mouth, and the shallow, held quality of his breath. The master stopped and simply placed his hand gently on the monk's tense shoulder. "Why are you so cold to yourself?" the master whispered, his voice soft as the rain outside. The monk, startled, whispered back, "Master, I am agitated by this relentless rain. I am failing to accept the conditions. I am impatient and judgmental, and I know I should not be." The master crouched down beside him, ignoring the other meditators. "Do you see the roof?" he asked, pointing to the dark wooden beams above. "The roof is old. It has many cracks, and when the rain falls, water drips down. Do you condemn the roof for being old and having cracks?" "No, master," the monk replied. "That would be foolish. The cracks are the nature of old wood. We simply place buckets beneath the drips and accept the maintenance." The master smiled. "Then why do you condemn your own heart for having cracks? The cracks of your humanity, impatience, irritation, fatigue, frustration. These are the nature of a human mind, an old, well-used vessel. When the rain of a difficult circumstance falls, a storm, a broken routine, a moment of profound uncertainty, it is natural for the water of agitation to drip through. The practice," he continued, leaning in closer, "is not to demand that your heart be a perfect, seamless new roof. The practice is simply to place a bucket, the bucket of kind attention, beneath the drip. Do not judge the drip. Simply receive it with tenderness. Acknowledge, here is the impatience. Here is the judgment. I see you. It is all right. This, too, is part of the storm. This is the power of self-compassion. It is the pause between the frustration and the self-condemnation. It is the decision to treat our own inner struggle with the same gentleness and understanding we would instinctively offer a tired child or a dear friend. When we are struggling, our first instinctive reaction is often one of aggressive self-criticism. We believe that by being harsh, we will somehow force ourselves to be better. But this harshness is simply another form of resistance. Resistance to our own current state of imperfection. It only adds a layer of pain to the existing difficulty. It makes the storm rage inside as well as out.
Self-compassion is the true form of self-acceptance. It says, "This is hard. I am struggling. This feeling is painful, and that is perfectly okay. I am human as you rest tonight." If you notice any difficult feelings arising, anxiety, regret, sadness, or simple restlessness, try the master's simple technique. Do not push the feeling away and do not dive into it. Imagine you are simply placing a small, gentle bucket beneath the drip. The bucket is your awareness. Say to the feeling silently, gently, "I see you. You are here. It is natural that you are here. I do not need you to leave, and I will not scold you for arriving." When you hold your inner pain with such tenderness, the feeling itself begins to soften.
Secondary suffering, the fighting of the feeling, simply falls away. The anxiety is still anxiety, but it is no longer your fault. The fear is still fear, but it is now held, not fought. The rain of life will continue to fall, bringing with it both blessing and disruption. But the capacity for peace is found in the quiet, compassionate tenderness with which we treat the inevitable cracks of our own dear, struggling human heart. Let the rain outside or the sounds in your room be a constant, soothing reminder. Things are falling apart and coming together exactly as they should, and your gentle acceptance of your own self is the only perfect shelter you will ever need. Rest now, held in the immense compassion of this moment, the mirror of others. Extending acceptance. The journey of surrender is incomplete if it stops at the boundary of the self. True acceptance must extend outward, embracing the unpredictable, often difficult terrain of other people. As the wise text suggests, we must move from self-compassion to the challenge of accepting others. It is easy to accept a mountain, for it is silent and unmoving. It is easy to accept a tree, for it gives and does not ask. But other human beings are as turbulent and unpredictable as a stormy sea. They do not conform to our expectations. They do not follow our scripts, and their actions often become the deepest mud on our path. In the Zen community, this challenge often arose among the students themselves. The monastery was a place of close, constant living, and the personalities of the monks often rubbed against one another like rough stones. There was a particular old monk named Jiko, known for his vast knowledge of the scriptures and his meticulous devotion to form. However, Jiko also had a peculiar and highly irritating habit. He constantly corrected the other monks' chanting, even during the most sacred rituals. His corrections were always accurate, but his manner was sharp, impatient, and public. Most of the younger monks found him utterly unbearable. One day, a young earnest monk named Tenzin came to the master, his face flushed with frustration. "Master," Tenzin said, his voice trembling slightly, I cannot find peace because of Jiko. His constant correction is like a fly in the ointment of my practice. I try to be mindful. I try to forgive. But every time he snaps a correction at me, my focus shatters, and a hot anger fills my chest. I have accepted the mud on the path, but how can I accept the mud in the mind of another person? The master did not immediately reply. He took Tenzin's hand and led him out to the monastery's courtyard, where a simple stone wall stood. On the far side of the wall they heard the sounds of children playing and shouting from the nearby village. "Tenzin," the master asked, "when the children shout, do you feel anger?" "No, master," Tenzin replied, slightly confused. "They are just children. Their noise is simply a condition of the day. It has no meaning for my mind. But their noise is as disruptive as Jiko's voice." The master pointed out, "Why does one noise fill you with peace and the other with rage?" Tenzin thought deeply, staring at the stone wall. "Because the children shouting is simply noise," he finally said. "It is impersonal, but Jiko's voice is full of intent. It is judgment directed at me." The master nodded slowly. "Ah, you do not suffer from Jiko's tone. You suffer from the story you tell yourself about Jiko's tone." He explained that the core of our difficulty with others is not their external action, but our internal reaction, which is fueled by a fixed internal image of who they are and who they should be. We suffer because we refuse to accept that Jiko, the monk, is simply a complex phenomenon, a mix of wisdom and irritation, deep practice, and a sharp tongue, just like the mountain mud is a mix of water and earth. Jiko's correction is the mud. Tenzin's anger is the refusal to step into the mud. The master continued, "Jiko's spirit is old wood, full of cracks, just like the roof we discussed. When the rain of a ritual falls, the water of his impatience drips through. Your practice is not to smooth his cracks, for that is not your business. Your practice is to simply treat his imperfection, like the noise of the children, as an impersonal condition of the universe. When Jiko corrects you, hear the words. Take the teaching if it is useful, but do not take the judgment into your heart. Let the judgment belong to Jiko. To his moment of suffering and impatience, his mud is his to carry. Your peace is to simply walk through it. This wisdom reveals the path of extending acceptance. It is the realization that every person we encounter is merely a reflection of their own history, their own suffering, and their own imperfect journey, their irritating habit, their unexpected unkindness, or their fundamental difference from you is not a personal attack. It is simply their nature manifesting in that moment. To accept others is to let go of the impossible demand that they should be different than they are. It is the practice of observing the world and all its turbulent, noisy inhabitants as an impersonal flow of conditions without taking the drama of their manifestation into your own soul. As you rest now, let your mind drift to any person who has caused you irritation, pain, or frustration. Do not judge them, and do not judge your memory of them. Simply look at them as a complex, suffering being. See their mud, their impatience, their fear, their need for control, not as an enemy, but as a condition, and then, with a deep exhale, release the need to correct them, to change them, or to condemn them. Let their actions belong to them. Let your peace belong to you. The mirror of others shows us not who they are, but the vastness of our own capacity for resistance. When we cease to resist their nature, we find a profound, liberating stillness. This stillness is pure acceptance. Rest in the peace that comes from having no personal enemies in the world. Learning from the fire, the grace of pain. The path of surrender requires an acceptance not only of the small irritations, the mud and the sharp-tongued monk, but also of the grand, searing challenges of life, the unavoidable experiences of loss, sickness, and deep emotional pain. The deepest teaching of Buddhism is that pain is a profound, albeit severe, teacher. We must learn from pain, not recoil from it. There is a distinction to be made between pain and suffering. Pain is the fire, the physical sensation of hurt, the emotional sting of loss, the shock of a setback. Suffering is the resistance to the fire. It is the frantic, secondary struggle to stop the burning, to deny the heat, to argue with the fact that the fire is here. A young scholar who had studied with the old master for many years lost his entire family in a sudden tragic illness that swept through the valley. When he returned to the monastery, he was a hollow shell. He sat in the meditation hall, but his posture was rigid, his breath broken, and his eyes were perpetually distant, lost in the sharp agony of memory. The master watched him for many days, allowing him to sit with his grief without interference. Finally, the master called him to his chamber and found him weeping silently. "Master," the young scholar choked out, "the pain is too great. It is a fire that consumes everything I have learned. All the teachings of impermanence, non-attachment, and acceptance. They are ash in my mouth. I cannot accept this loss." The master nodded. He did not offer a gentle, spiritual platitude. He spoke with the clear, sharp tone of profound truth. "The fire is consuming you because you are fighting it," the master said. "You are trying to be a peaceful, whole vessel that is not allowed to burn, but the loss is the fire, and a fire that is resisted will rage out of control. Your suffering," the master continued, "is not the fire
of laws. Your suffering is your insistence that your life should not contain this heat. You are fighting the very thing that is now the reality of your existence. You try to push the pain away, but you only push the pain deeper into the marrow of your bones. But what am I to do? The scholar pleaded. How can one live with this burning? The master replied with a Zen instruction that is both brutal and tender. Step into the flame. This instruction to step into the flame is the ultimate act of surrender. It is not an invitation to masochism. It is an invitation to radical intimacy with the truth of the moment. It means dropping the resistances to the pain and allowing the full, unadulterated sensation of loss to be felt. The scholar sat up, stunned by the instruction. The master explained, when you step into the fire, you realize two things. First, the fire is not consuming you, the essential being. It is consuming only the idea of the life you thought you had, the
expectations you held, and the attachments you built. Second, when you stop fighting the heat, you can begin to feel the texture of the heat itself. It is no longer a roaring enemy, but a sensation, a tight knot in the chest, a hollow ache in the belly, a rush of tears. The practice of learning from pain is to become an impartial, intimate witness to the fire. It means watching the flames, noticing their color, their heat, and their movement without leaping out of the furnace. It is the moment when we realize that the capacity to feel this depth of pain is simply the measure of our human capacity for love and connection. The scholar began to practice this. He stopped trying to meditate his grief away. When the wave of loss came, he did not resist. He turned toward it. He allowed the tears to flow fully, allowing his body to shake with the sheer, honest weight of the pain. In that allowance, a subtle but profound transformation began. He saw that by not resisting, the wave would crest and then subside, leaving him exhausted but cleansed, like land after a brush fire. He realized the pain was teaching him the fragility of life, the preciousness of every single breath, and the utter necessity of non-attachment to form. The fire was burning away the superficial layers, leaving only the essential truth. The deep acceptance of pain brings a grace that resistance can never achieve. It is the realization that the most painful experiences are often the ones that crack open the shell of the ego, allowing a deeper, more resilient wisdom to emerge. As you rest tonight, let this wisdom settle deep into your consciousness. If any lingering pain or difficulty is present, physical or emotional, do not fight the sensation. Imagine yourself stepping tenderly into the flame of that discomfort. Do not judge the sensation. Do not analyze its cause. Simply feel its presence, its shape, its intensity,
its texture. Trust that the fire is only consuming what needs to be released. Trust that you, the witness, are inherently safe and that your strength is found not in your ability to be untouched, but in your immense, courageous willingness to feel. Rest now, cleansed by the honest, transformative heat of acceptance. The struggle is over. The sufficiency of this simple moment. After the scholar accepted his loss and began to heal through the fire of his grief, the master sent him away from the bustling life of the monastery to a tiny, isolated hut further up the mountain. His instruction was simple. Practice the art of sufficiency. Sufficiency is the antidote to the endless craving that characterizes the non-stop forward push of modern life. We are taught that peace is found in the next achievement, the next possession, the next perfected state of being. We are conditioned to feel that enough is always just out of reach. But the Zen teaching is clear. Everything that is required for your peace is already present in this single, immediate moment. This is the
profound truth of rest now in this simple sufficiency. The scholar, now isolated in his small hut, struggled initially. He was an intellectual, a doer, a person of deep discipline. He wanted a grand goal to achieve, a new scriptural text to master, a new meditation technique to conquer. Instead, he had a tiny space, a worn cushion, and a vast, silent mountain. His days were stripped down to the simplest possible elements. Rise with the sun, fetch water, chop wood, sit, eat, sleep. The simplicity felt empty, a failure of productivity. His mind raced with judgments. You are wasting time. You are not advancing. You should be doing more. One afternoon, sitting in the silence, he suddenly felt a profound hunger. He had only a small bowl of plain cooked grain left for his meal, and the next supply was days away. His initial reaction was panic, a rush of fear about future deprivation. He stared at the bowl of grain. It was bland, unremarkable, and entirely finite. Yet, as he looked, he realized that it was, at that very moment, enough. It was precisely the food he needed to nourish the body that was sitting there right now. It was not too much. It was not too little. It simply was. In that moment of radical focus on the immediate, he recognized that his anxiety was not about the grain in the bowl, but about the absence of grain in an imagined future bowl. He was fighting tomorrow's hunger with today's stomach. He picked up the bowl and ate slowly, mindfully, allowing the simple texture and warmth of the grain to be his entire world. With each chew, the thought arose, this is sufficiency. This small thing is providing exactly what is needed. When he finished the meal, his body was quiet, and his mind was still. The feeling was not one of excitement or triumph, but a deep, settled peace. He realized that the practice of sufficiency is not about having a full life. It is about having a full experience of what is present. The mountain, which had seemed empty, now revealed its fullness. The precise sound of the wind moving through the pines, the subtle change in the light as the sun tracked across the sky, the exact warmth of the rock beneath his hand. He had been too focused on what was missing to notice the immense quiet perfection of what was there. Sufficiency is the cessation of the push. It is the deep realization that this breath, this moment, this tired body, this single feeling is the only reality you have, and in its uniqueness, it is already complete. As you lie here, moving toward the deep sufficiency of sleep, let this lesson wash over your restlessness. Notice what you are demanding of this moment. Do you demand instant sleep? Do you demand silence? Do you demand a specific feeling of relaxation? All these demands are forms of resistance, denying the moment's own quiet perfection. Instead, let your attention rest on what is simply present. Notice the place where your body touches the surface beneath you. Feel the simple, steady pressure of contact. That support is sufficiency. Notice the gentle movement of your breath, in and out. This sustaining rhythm is sufficiency. Notice the absolute certainty that in this moment, nothing is threatening you, and nothing is required of you. This stillness is sufficiency. You do not need to become perfectly calm or perfectly enlightened tonight. You only need to know that this single, small moment, unadorned and unforced, is all you ever truly need. Rest now in the perfect, simple, self-sustaining completeness of this present breath, the skillful effort and letting go. One of the most profound teachings of the Buddha concerns the subtle relationship between skillful effort and letting go, particularly regarding the results of our actions, or karma. It is a common misconception that surrender means passivity, or that acceptance is the same as resignation. Zen demands effort, but it demands an effort that is purified of attachment. The Master once taught, as our wisdom text reminds us, you can influence outcomes through skillful effort, but you cannot determine them through will alone. This recognition brings both humility and freedom. To illustrate this, the Master gathered his students for a lesson in archery in the center of the courtyard. He placed a target and then placed a small worn stool beside it. He asked the strongest, most determined monk to take the bow. This monk had a fierce will and a powerful focus on achievement. He drew the bowstring back, his muscles straining, his eye fixed on the exact center of the target. He wanted desperately to hit the bullseye. He held the tension for a long time, meticulously calculating every variable. The wind, the angle, the strength of his pull. Finally, he released the arrow. It flew, but in his intense attachment to the perfect result, His focus had narrowed, his hand had slightly twitched, and the arrow missed the bullseye entirely, landing several feet to the left. The monk immediately slumped in profound frustration. His will had failed him. The master then asked the gentlest, quietest monk to take the bow. This monk was known for his calm attention to the task at hand, but he was not exceptionally strong. The quiet monk approached the line. He stood with the simple, balanced posture of a person who is simply present. He took a deep breath and then picked up the arrow. He did not strain. He did not stare at the bullseye with desperate focus. Instead, he paid quiet, precise attention to the act of drawing the bow. He felt the smooth wood, the texture of the string, the balance of the arrow. His effort was skillful. It was precise, mindful, and complete. But it was not attached. He drew the bow to the limit of his comfort, held it for only a moment, and released the arrow, not with a push of the will, but with a gentle release of his effort. The arrow flew true. It did not hit the center, but it landed close enough to be a respectable shot. The monk, however, did not react with pride or triumph. He simply watched the arrow land and then quietly set down the bow. The effort was complete. The result was the universe's affair. The master explained. The first monk's effort was ruined by his greed for the outcome. His focus was on the future, the bullseye, and not on the present moment, which is the only place where the action is actually taking place. His attachment to the result introduced a terrible tension into his arm, and that tension caused the miss. The second monk's effort was purified. His entire focus was the skillful completion of the step at hand. His effort was total, but his mind was free. He did his best, and then he let the arrow go, along with the result. The outcome was simply the natural consequence of his perfect, unattached action. This is the deeper meaning of karma. Actions have consequences, but those consequences unfold within conditions that extend far beyond individual control. The wind, the slight imperfection of the wood, the angle of the sun. You must offer your best, most skillful effort, but you must hold the outcome loosely. The teaching is a beautiful paradox. Maximum effort, minimum attachment. Tonight, as you rest, let this principle guide your final letting go. Think of a persistent worry, an issue in your life where you feel you must control the result. This control is the same as the first monk's strained grip on the bow. It is introducing tension into your system, straining your mind, and ironically, making the outcome you desire less likely. The path to peace is to gently release the idea that you can determine the future through worry. You have already done what you could. The seeds of today's effort have been planted. Now you must surrender the need to stand over the soil and force the seed to sprout. Imagine right now gently opening your hands. In your palms are the outcomes you are trying to force. Notice the tension in your fingers, the tightness in your wrist. Now, take a long, slow breath. And with the softest of exhales, imagine letting the outcomes, the arrow, the result, the solution, simply float away. You are not abandoning the situation. You are simply placing the result into the hands of the larger, impersonal flow of conditions. You have done your part. This recognition brings immense freedom. The work is done. The future is not yet here. All that remains is the profound stillness of the present moment, free of the tension of the will. Rest now, your effort completed, your outcome surrendered. The deeper way, beyond reactivity, the collection of wisdom we have explored, from accepting the mud to surrendering the outcome, all converge on a single liberating point: the discovery of the deeper way to meet life, a path that moves beyond mere reactivity. Reactivity is our conditioned, knee-jerk response to the world. It is the immediate lurch of anger when corrected, the instant clutch of fear when uncertain, the sharp judgment when someone disappoints us. It honors our feelings, but it leaves us controlled by them. When we are reactive, we are not truly acting. We are being acted upon by the world, by the torrent of our own emotions and thoughts. The deeper way is the space between the stimulus and the response. It is the quiet, conscious pause where freedom lives. It is the path that honors your feelings while not being controlled by them. In the mountain monastery, there was an old bell in the courtyard, a beautiful bronze relic. Its tone was deep, clear, and perfectly resonant. Every morning, the time for the first sitting would be announced by the striking of the bell. One morning, a young novice was given the duty of striking the bell for the first time. He was nervous, determined to create the perfect, resonant tone. He lifted the heavy wooden striker, focused intently, and brought it down with a heavy, clumsy blow. Instead of the deep, clear tone, the bell emitted a muffled, tinny thud. The novice instantly recoiled in shame. The old familiar spiral of self-criticism and embarrassment began to spin in his mind. You failed. You are not good enough. Everyone heard your mistake. His feeling of failure was immense, and his body tensed, ready to flee the scene. This was his reactivity. The master, who had been observing from a nearby window, slowly walked over to the bell. He did not look at the novice. He simply picked up the striker and handed it to the boy. "The sound the bell makes," the master said softly, "is merely a vibration in the air. It is impersonal. It is simply the fact of the moment. Your shame," he continued,
is the story you tell yourself about the fact. The deeper way is the one that includes your humanity, your fear, your clumsiness, your embarrassment, while offering something deeper than reactivity. He instructed the novice to strike the bell again, but with a different focus. Feel the weight of the striker in your hand. Feel the balance. Breathe in. And as you breathe out, do not push the striker down. Simply release it, allowing the laws of nature to complete the action. Be present only for the strike. The novice, taking a deep, calming breath, followed the instruction. He felt the weight. He felt the release, and the striker connected with the bronze. This time, the bell sang. It was not a perfect sound, but it was clear, resonant, and beautiful. The novice felt a surge of quiet, pure joy. But this time, he did not cling to the joy either. He simply allowed the sound to fade into the mountain silence. The master explained the lesson. The pause was the space of freedom. The first strike was uncontrolled, an expression of his frantic, attached will. The second strike was a skillful action, flowing from a state of presence and surrender. The deeper way is to always create a pause between the event and your response. The event is the tinny sound, the unexpected criticism, the surge of anxiety. The reactivity is the shame, the lurch of anger, the
urge to flee. The pause is the single conscious breath you take before you move. In that brief, sacred pause, you honor your feelings. I feel shame. I feel anger. But you regain control over your action. You realize you are not the slave of the emotion. You are the witness to it. You offer a response that is considered, skillful, and aligned with your deepest intention, rather than a frantic defense of the ego. As you rest now, let this idea of the pause, the space of freedom, sink deep into your mind. This pause is always available to you. It is the simplest and most profound tool of Zen. Imagine a difficult conversation from the past week, or a moment where you felt an intense, emotional urge to react. Now, replay that moment, but this time, insert the pause. The stimulus arrives. Pause. Take a slow, deep, quiet breath. In that moment of stillness, the emotion can be felt, but it loses its power to command you. You realize that you have a choice. You can follow the old, exhausting path of resistance and reactivity, or you can choose the deeper, calmer, more skillful way forward. This choice is the core of liberation. It is the awareness that allows you to flow with life, instead of constantly pushing against it. Rest in the quiet power of this pause. There is no need to rush. All the time in the world is contained in the space of a single, slow breath. The final surrender, flowing with life. We have journeyed through the muddy paths of resistance.
empty the burdens of the past and future, and learn to treat our own pain and the imperfections of others with tenderness and acceptance. We have seen that peace is found not in the perfection of the journey, but in the perfection of our willingness to meet it exactly as it is. The final total surrender is the quiet realization that the path of acceptance is not a destination to be reached, but a way of walking. It is not about a grand, dramatic conversion, but the simple, consistent willingness to flow. Imagine, one last time, the river we spoke of, fed by the mountain springs. Its water is constantly moving, constantly changing, constantly giving way to the water that follows. It does not cling to the bank. It does not argue with the stones that impede its way, and it does not fret about the ocean it has yet to reach. It simply flows. To flow with life instead of constantly pushing against it is to align your own energy with this natural, easy movement of the universe. When you push, you create friction, tension, and fatigue. When you flow, you are carried by the natural force of things. The old master, in his final instruction to his students, simply gestured to the world around them. The way forward, he said, is not difficult. It is the most natural thing in the world. The natural thing in the world is for the leaves to fall when autumn arrives. The natural thing is for the light to diminish as the night deepens. The natural thing is for the mind to slow down and seek rest when the body is tired. Our only challenge is our insistence on fighting this naturalness. Tonight, you have practiced this letting go. You have seen that there is always another way to meet whatever comes, a way that includes your humanity while offering something deeper than reactivity. You don't need to become perfectly accepting or never feel frustrated again. The perfection is in the next choice to surrender. The path of acceptance is walked one step at a time, one breath at a time. It is not a race, and there is no finish line. There is only the gentle, quiet process of being present with the step you are taking right now. As your breath naturally slows and your body settles into the deep, gravitational pull of rest, let yourself feel the gentle completeness of this journey we have taken together, through muddy paths and unexpected rain, through the wisdom of impermanence and the tenderness of self-compassion, through accepting others and learning from pain, through presence and letting go. You have been exploring your capacity for peace. There is nothing left to hold. The burdens have been dropped. The resistance has softened. The current of your life is slowing, entering the calm, still waters of rest. Surrender to the depth of this moment. Let the weight of your eyelids complete their work. Let the thoughts that remain simply float away like the last embers of a distant fire, fading into the immense, kind darkness. Trust the night. Trust the process. You are safe. You are held. You are flowing. Let go. Rest now in the stillness of the simple sufficiency.